People say, if God has chosen you, no weapon formed against you will prosper. And that is true. But most people hear that at the surface level. They hear protection. They hear victory. They hear survival. But that is only half the story. The other half, the part almost nobody talks about, is that when Satan cannot cancel your calling, he studies it. He watches the shape of it. He looks for the pressure points. He builds a playbook around your assignment. Because the enemy does not just attack sin. He attacks significance. He attacks seed. He attacks whatever God marked. So the question is not, why am I under attack? The question is, what in me is this attack trying to distort before it becomes fruitful? Here is what most people do not understand. Satan's first strategy against chosen people is usually not destruction. It is distortion. Distortion of identity. Distortion of perception. Distortion of timing. In Luke 4, Satan comes after Jesus right after public affirmation, not before it. In 1 Peter 5 verse 8, believers are told to stay sober and alert because the adversary stalks, watches, looks for an opening. Not random chaos. Patterned warfare. Not just pain. Strategy. And if you can see the playbook, you can stop calling every attack confusion and start naming it for what it is. The first tactic is identity erosion. Here's what it looks like from the inside. You know what God said, but suddenly it feels far away. You become hyper-aware of your weakness. You start measuring yourself by what is missing, what is delayed, what is not working yet. You do not stop loving God. You just start quietly questioning who you are to Him. Quietly, internally, repeatedly. Jesus' story is the clearest picture of this. In Luke 3, He comes up out of the Jordan and the Father publicly affirms Him. Then immediately in Luke 4, He is driven into the wilderness. Hungry, alone, unseen, and the temptation is not random. It is targeted. If you're the Son of God, that phrase is the blade. Not just bread, not just kingdoms. Identity. Notice the timing. The temptation comes after the affirmation, not before it. And Mark's account says He was there with the wild beasts. A small detail most people skip, which means this was not a polished devotional moment. This was raw, harsh, exposed. Here is what nobody tells you. The enemy often attacks right where heaven just spoke. He does not waste time arguing with lies you already believe. He goes after the truth you just received. If God has named you, expect hell to challenge the name. The diagnostic question is this. Are you fighting sin right now, or are you really fighting a quiet crisis of identity? Yes or no? The second tactic is strategic exhaustion. Here is what it looks like from the inside. Everything feels heavier than it should. Your prayers feel thin. Your mind feels loud. Small disappointments feel enormous. You start interpreting fatigue as failure. You start calling burnout discernment. You start believing things at midnight you would have rebuked at noon. Elijah's story is the clearest picture of this in 1 Kings 19. This is a man who just stood on Carmel and watched fire fall. Public victory, massive breakthrough, and then one threat from Jezebel sends him running into the wilderness. He tells his servant to stay behind. That detail matters. Isolation deepens. Then he sits under a broom tree and asks God to let him die. Not because God failed him, because he is depleted, because he is wrung out, because his body and soul are both screaming at once. And what does God do first? He does not give Elijah a lecture. He gives him sleep, then bread, then water, then sleep again, then more bread, twice, because the journey is too much for him. Here is what nobody tells you. Sometimes the enemy's most effective tactic is not open temptation. It is simple depletion. If he cannot make you rebel, he will try to wear you thin. Because exhausted people misread reality. They mistake weariness for revelation. They call despair prophecy. They call depletion discernment. The diagnostic question is this. Are you under deep spiritual attack, or are you so exhausted that everything sounds darker than it really is? Yes or no? The third tactic is the shortcut. Here is what it looks like from the inside. You're tired of waiting, tired of being hidden, tired of almost. So when an opportunity appears, especially one that looks spiritual, practical, and overdue, you feel the pull to force what God promised, to help God out, to move early, to to grab what looks like destiny with fleshly hands. David's story is the clearest picture of this in 1 Samuel 24. He is living in caves, hunted like an animal, carrying a promise that has not become a throne yet. Then Saul, the very man blocking David's future, walks into the cave where David is hiding. And not for battle, for relief. Vulnerable, exposed. David's men whisper, "This is your moment. This is the day God delivers your enemy into your hand." It sounds spiritual. It sounds timely. It sounds justified. David creeps forward and cuts the corner of Saul's robe. Just the edge. Just enough to prove he could have done more. And then his own heart strikes him. Here is what nobody tells you. Satan's shortcuts often come wrapped in prophetic language. The trap is not always evil-looking. Sometimes it looks efficient. Sometimes it looks deserved. Sometimes it sounds like answered prayer. But if the method violates God, the opportunity did not come from God. Chosen people are not just tested by hardship. They are tested by access. The diagnostic question is this: are you waiting on God right now, or are you reaching for a shortcut because delay has become unbearable? Yes or no? Before I close, I need to say this carefully. This framework is not an excuse for paranoia, and it is not permission for self-pity. Do not use it to blame Satan for every hard season, every consequence, or every closed door. And do not use it to stay passive while calling laziness warfare. Use it to become discerning. Use it to become sober. Use it to recognize patterns and respond with obedience. So where are you? If you are in identity erosion, go back to what God said and refuse to negotiate with the whisper. If you are in strategic exhaustion, stop spiritualizing your depletion and let God restore your body, your mind, and your rhythm. If you're facing a shortcut, do not force a door that requires you to disobey God just to walk through it. And now, come back to that cave. David is in the dark. Promise over his life. Pressure in his chest. The man who has made his life miserable is close enough to touch. One move, and the waiting ends. One move, and the cave becomes a throne room. One move, and everybody around him will call it wisdom. But David leaves the cave with only a torn piece of fabric in his hand. That matters, because the chosen are not proven only by what they survive. They are proven by what they refuse. Refuse to become. Refuse to seize. Refuse to believe. This is the playbook. Identity. Exhaustion. Shortcut. And this is how you break it. Stand in who God called you. Rest when God restores you. Wait when your flesh wants a grab. Formed, not rushed. Hidden, not forgotten. Tested, not abandoned. May you discern the tactic, reject the lie, and endure long enough to become everything God chose you to be.